Who's come forward to support you in the middle of this chaos?
There are folks that have supported me.
Who specifically is supporting you today?
There are people.
Okay,
You just have to see them out there. There is a protest. Well, I've talked
just one
to
name,
people from different groups. A lot of people from the administration.
Governor, you're not able to give me the name of one person in Puerto Rico who supports you continuing as governor. Is that correct?
I can. So the mayor of San Sebastian, for example, supported this effort.
Whose
Mayors
name is?
From different municipalities. Javier Jimenez, for example. There are other folks that have established people in the legislature and people in the Senate as well have supported the state. They have supported the fact that I'm not going to run and that I shouldn't seek re-election, but they've established that it is important to follow rule of law. So there is support, Shepard. I understand the visuals that you're seeing and what's going on. I've heard that.
What have you heard from the demonstrators on your streets today? Give me some examples of the sorts of things that you've heard today.
Well, we've heard that there is obviously disappointment.
That's not what I've heard, Governor, with great respect. I've not heard that there's disappointment. I've heard Puerto Rican after Puerto Rican after Puerto Rican watching multiple satellite feeds and speaking with our people who are in Puerto Rico today and listening to journalists from other organizations, and I've not heard the word disappointment. I've heard numerous Puerto Ricans say that you have disrespected them, that you have not led them properly, that you've made fun of them, that you've made light of them, that they no longer trust in your leadership. For example, you got 660,000 votes to be governor of Puerto Rico. By all estimates, there are more than that on the streets of Puerto Rico today demanding that you step down.
Listen, I'm not making light of the demonstrations. I'm establishing that we've established what we want to do, the efforts that are ongoing, and what we need in order to fix this problem. There is a problem. We started to fix it, and we've already presented a plan. Now, I want to make sure that we can collaborate with the federal government, particularly with some of the federal resources that are coming over here. I've established and I challenge that we can get a federal funds SAR over here in Puerto Rico and in all the agencies so that these funds can keep on moving. These are the proposals that we have, and my objective is that we can establish this conversation.
These sound like reasonable proposals for an island in crisis. I'm sure they do to a lot of our viewers. But you're eliminating the past few weeks and the last 10 days of demonstrations and the widespread calls and all that you've said. You said, I've apologized for my mistakes. That's how you've called them repeatedly. That's what you called them in a news conference that you held just the other day. Mistakes are things that you do that you didn't mean to do, or that you did by accident or in error, and then you go back and you correct them. 900 pages of attacks on people of your own island are arguably not mistakes. They're a pattern. And when you look at that pattern, if that were some other politician other than you, what would you say about that person? Would you want that person leading you after all that you said to those other officials whom you've now dismissed summarily?
Well, I would want to showcase my record. Those are words. I would also showcase my actions. The efforts that we've made in Puerto Rico, the challenges that we have, that we're now starting on a recovery, that we've done a restructuring effort with a fiscal oversight board over here, that we've reduced the cost, the expenditures in government because Puerto Rico was in a fiscal crunch. That since we started in the administration, we've made strides on the economy and elsewhere, but mostly we've made policy changes that are significant for women, for LGBTQ, for other sectors that are recognized as some of the biggest steps in those efforts. So again, I used words that I have apologized for, but I've also taken significant actions in the direction of helping vulnerable sectors in our population.
Have you appropriately apologized? Have you apologized to Ricky Martin? Have you apologized to the survivors of the people who died in the storm that ravaged your island? Have you appropriately come forward and asked for forgiveness and hope to move on? Because the looks of your streets today would suggest that the people don't believe you had. 10 days in a row. Have you apologized sufficiently? And what will end these demonstrations as long as you're still in office?
Well, again, I have apologized
sufficiently
to some of them. My effort is to apologize to all of them. No,
well, you can do that here if you want to have a mea culpa. If you want to have a mea culpa, you're welcome to do that here.
Yeah, I've done so. I apologize.
So you don't want to do so again.
People I've offended. So to Ricky Martin, to to the Melissa.
What about the survivors of the dead people who were made light of?
Of course, that as well. I apologize for all of the things that I have.
Why'd you say those things? What was it that inspired you to say those things to other officials in such a cavalier, dismissive way? Do you remember what it was over that? It wasn't just a day. It wasn't just a week. It wasn't just a month. It was 2 months, 900 pages in December and January of that sort of language from the governor, by the way, about his own people.
Yeah. Well, again, some of that language is not mine. Some of it was discussed by.
Oh, that's true. Because it was someone else who said that. You're right. Because I want to clarify that, and I apologize because it was someone else who said, "Oh, I'd like to shoot the female mayor of San Juan," and then it was you who said, "Oh, you'd be doing me a great favor."
Yeah. So again, everything that was said, I assume responsibility for. I apologize for it, but I just wanted to establish I am in a position to apologize to everybody, to make an effort for reconciliation, and now devoid and disconnected of the political winds. My focus is to make sure that the policy that we have enacted moves forward.
Those of us who live back here stateside have watched the horrors that have ravaged your island, and many of us, I know I have, and a lot of people on my staff have looked and just have wept for your people. To see all that your people have gone through and the difficulty in getting everything fixed, the months and months without power and water, the devastation of the tourism economy, at least for a while, seeing all of that really made us very sad and wanting to help in some way. I know a lot of people around here have donated.
Yeah.
Do you love Puerto Rico?
Yeah. I do love Puerto Rico.
Well, if you love Puerto Rico,
I was there.
if you love Puerto Rico and you look out on the streets and you see that these hundreds of thousands of people, excuse me, sir, if you see these hundreds of thousands of people who also love Puerto Rico and have looked at the governor's office and said, that's a man who can no longer lead us. Because, Governor, that's what they're saying today. They're saying the way for us to move on is to start fresh. We need new representation, and we want the governor to resign. And they've protested for 10 straight days. Today, the largest demonstration potentially in the history of the island. And you stand with firm resolve and talk about accomplishments. Do you hear them? Do you hear them and care what they're saying today? Or is the cavalier attitude from the text messages sort of living in the background again today? I ask not for myself, but for the people who are on a hot, wet day in San Juan and across that island today saying, we want him gone.
Yeah, no, I hear them, and it's part of my introspection, and I will continue to hear them. I will continue to make my decisions and work with the people of Puerto Rico. It is an island of love that I love. It is a people I love. I've left every ounce of heart, everything that I've done so that we can recover properly. I was here, sir, during that process when there was no food, there was no access to water, there were no roads, working as hard as I could with a lot of people so that we can get those emergency aid to the people of Puerto Rico.
What about the corruption of all those dollars? Why did all that money go to politically connected people? Why wasn't there better oversight? Why are thousands and thousands and thousands of people long after this hurricane still sitting with blue tarps and not able to live their lives? Some of them don't have the basic necessities of life all this time later, and you've gotten billions and billions and billions of dollars from the mainland. The people of Puerto Rico are asking tough questions. They've been doing so for a while. And most of them say in your newspapers today and on our cameras today that the text messages are not the reason. They're the final straw. They believe your administration has been corrupt and cavalier about their own existence, and they want you to leave, and you're refusing to do so. What makes you think that these protests are going to stop? And are you afraid that you might not even be safe to govern?
Well, again, what I want to do is continue on the conversation. There are some things you pointed out there that are important.
But you refused to meet with the people who are protesting outside. They've begged you to meet with you. They've begged for a sit-down, and my understanding is you've said no. You haven't even done a one-on-one interview with anybody in Puerto Rico since this scandal started, just that news conference the other day.
I've had 2 news conferences with all of the press, and I haven't rejected a conversation with anybody. So I am committed to having that conversation, establishing a path forward through dialogue, and working on the initiatives that we have to do over here. But listen, the blue tarp situation is one where we need those federal resources to come over here. I am challenging and proposing as part of our fix that we can get, a federal fund SAR, or that we can get connections from the different agencies to the local agencies in Puerto Rico, so that those funds can be administered properly. In terms of the corruption, this has been a long-standing issue, and we need to fix the system. It was a system that responded to people. Now we want a system that responds to itself. That is why we've made procurement reform. That is why we created the Office of the Inspector General that didn't exist here in Puerto Rico. We created that office early in 2017. We couldn't implement it immediately after the storm, and now it's starting to gain that rate. That is why probably there was a difficulty in identifying some of these elements of corruption. But from my perspective, I am fully committed on battling corruption here in Puerto Rico, and that will be the focus from the remaining of my administration.
Governor Roselló of Puerto Rico, live from San Juan. Sir, the best to the people of Puerto Rico. The news continues.
Bet your floor.